So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the midterm exam and the midterm project. So if you take a look on your calendar, you can see that the midterm project is due on Monday the 4th. The midterm exam, as soon as it's ready, it will show up there as well. So all this material needs to be completed by the 4th of May. Yesterday, or last night on Tuesday, you were to turn in Chapter 5 homework. Chapter 5 homework was a continuation of Chapter 4 homework. It did not ask you to include 4. Many of you did that. That's not what it asked you for. So please follow directions. It just makes for easy for me to correct and get back to you in a timely fashion. So that was Chapter 5 homework that you should have gotten a response to. Many of you are not even checking your grade book to know where your responses should come in. So that's what we're going to do next. If I go in, there would be a grade book off to the left. Now, mine says grade book, but because I'm not a student, it's not going to show up like yours. This is what yours will show up like. If you go into the grade book, you will see a number of assignments and you'll see feedback in blue on the right. If you select feedback, you'll get a screen that looks like this. This is the feedback I sent someone on Chapter 4. Notice, check your variable type. The hypothesis, you put a P in it, should be a mu. All of you should have a mu. Okay, type of error consequence, that was incorrect. The sample size, many of you miss a sample size. It has a statistical symbol. I'll show you exactly in the course where you can find that. It's all in the lectures. They needed to construct a histogram. This histogram is needed because of the type of data that this person had. All of you have the same, pretty much the same type of data. It is quantitative. Let me go show you why you would find that. Okay, and then it says you need to fix this up because it will be needed in Chapter 5, 6, and 7. So if you don't have the right data in 4, it's not going to give you the right data in 5, and so forth. All right, so your project, which you'll be working on, will consist of fixing Chapter 4 and inputting 5. Chapter 5 homework was only on Chapter 5. Your project looks like this. Your project is an activity and a test that puts you through all chapters 1 through 5. It's also a great way to study for your midterm exam, which is on WAMAP. So let's run through this a little bit. We'll come back to the contents of the paper and the technology requirements and so forth. So as I run through this, introduction, there's a question of interest. If I am a company and I am manufacturing chocolate chip cookies, do you think I want to not put very many chocolate chips in there? It might save me some money. Correct. But in the long run, are you going to buy my cookie? Absolutely not. Go to the store and see how many brands and how many different kinds of chocolate chip cookies are out there for sale. If you're not thinking you're getting chocolate chips in your chocolate chip cookie, you will buy a different brand. That's not how the company makes money. Yes, they will save in not putting all the chocolate chips in, but if they're not selling cookies, who cares? So think about your question of interest. The company says I should have 28 grams in my package. Well, by golly, if I know that I'm getting ripped off, I'm probably not going to buy that product. I'm going to move on to something else. So think about the question of interest. Do I really have that in there? And then what am I trying to do? So that would be your hypothesis. So the introduction and the hypothesis somewhat go together. You have to know the type of variable. The type of variable isn't 28 grams. That is a measurement of the variable. The type of variable, if you go back to your course and look at the lectures, okay, the type of variable, notice it says chapters 2 and 4. So if I go to the type of variable, let's look at chapter 4 and let's see what's in chapter 4 to see if that will help me. So I'm going to go back in the course. Okay, and I'm going to go down to chapter 4 because that's what it says it should be referenced. So if I go into chapter 4, let's see, type of variable. Does that mean I have to listen and read everything again? Well, you should have notes. Type of variables, chapter 1, lecture 1. Type of variables, let's see what that pulls up. Okay, there are two types of variables. They are either quantitative or qualitative. So all of you have quantitative. You have a numerical value that can be average, i.e. mean and mode. You have to determine, is your quantitative variable continuous or discrete? This is very important for what comes later in the course. So That's how you find your type of variable. So that was in chapter 4. You don't have that many chapters to look at. Go through the lectures. They're titled at exactly what you will find in that lecture. Okay, going down to hypothesis. This happened in chapter 1. Several of you didn't do chapter 1 homework, so this might be a challenge for you. Go back and listen to those lectures. You need to use mathematical symbols. It will tell you the null and what symbol. Now, you are all dealing with numerical data that are not percentages. P would not be a value you would use. You would use mu. Every one of you will use mu. Mu equals what? What did the company advertise that should be in that package? Now, when you look and it says 28 grams, that's 28 grams of the content in the package. On the sheet I sent you, some of you will need to subtract the package weight from the overall data. That's why I gave you that value. It's of the amount in the package. So if I say 28 grams, that's my null. My alternative, you need to use the correct symbols. Mu, yes, there is a mu on every one of your Word document. There's a mu in Google. You might have to look some things up. So this would be, let's see, I don't think they're giving me 28, but I'm pretty sure they're going to give me more than 28. So you have to make sure that you have checked what your question is. The direction of the test, okay, that comes from the alternative. If you're uncertain of the direction of the test, it says go back and look at chapter 1. It will explain in a video how to find. Notice on here, you also need to explain. You need to summarize what you're thinking. Okay, there's a consequence and there's a description. Consequence can be a little bit difficult for you to figure out at this time, but think about what happens if I do not accept the null. I reject it. I'm saying there's not 28. I must think there's more when there really isn't. So think about the consequence of the company and the consumer. Sampling methods. Notice this comes from chapter 2 and 3. Some of you got 10 packages of 2 types of flavor. Some of you got 5 packages of 4 types of flavor. Now, why would I do that? Well, there's a thing called stratified sampling. I have to represent the entire box. It's not all made up of one type. It's made up of many types, and I have to have a representation of what is in that box. If there are 10 of each, I would take 5 of each. Okay, go back and look at your sampling methods. Sample size. Many of you did not put a symbol. That is part of the directions. You have to use symbols. So if I'm looking at the sample size, I can find that in lecture 2. So let me just go to lecture 2 and let's see what lecture 2 looks like to see if I can't find that sample size. Okay, so I'm back in the course. I'm going to go in as a student and I'm going to look at lecture 2. So I'm going to scroll down to lecture 2. Chapter 2, excuse me. And if I go in here, oh, population and samples. Maybe that will help me. Oh, I see right here, sample size. What does that tell me? Okay, so for those of you not spending the time in the course, you just won't make it. Okay, there's too much information. You cannot complete these assignments in a single day. It's impossible. Tried it myself. Okay, so as I read through this, I'm just scrolling. I'm not even listening to the lecture again. I would even have these notes in front of me and I just passed it and it says the sample size is lowercase n. So you are going to need to find and look and listen to this material if you're going to have a satisfactory grade on your midterm project, which counts as a test. The data needs to be included. Okay, this was not on your last one. Okay, did not ask for data, but I noticed that some people didn't understand that you would have to subtract the package weight to know what contents are in there. The manufacturer is reporting on the contents. Okay, possible bias. I gave you some suggestions. Go look at your feedback. Experiment and observation. That is chapter 3. That's why it says chapter 3 here. Go back and look. What is it? Some of you put experiment. You didn't do anything to these cookies. All I'm doing is counting them. Okay, and then probably eating them, but it had nothing to do with the weight of the package. Graphical summary. This was a huge struggle for many of you. Okay, so it looks like I need to look at chapter 4. So I'm going to call up chapter 4. Let's see what chapter 4 tells me. So if I go into chapter 4, and I'm looking for the types of display. Let's see, qualitative displays. None of your data is qualitative, so ignore that lecture. Quantitative display and quantitative data. Okay, so there are two types. Illustration of quantitative display. I'm going to go in there and look. Okay, if I look, stem and leaf, you all have